I start my painting by wetting the canvas, and then I apply some Phthalo Blue mixed with water, and I try to mix the top part with Phthalo Blue and Titanium White to make it lighter, but then I keep it dark on the bottom, not adding any white to it. And I finish off with adding some lighter color on the top, making it look like there were some sun rays coming down from the surface. Then I drew my fish and some of the corals in the background. I start with the Phthalo Blue again, and in the background here I'm only using Phthalo Blue, Phthalo Green, and in some area mix the white into it. I began to paint some highlights where the corals are. I try to add some darker shades of Phthalo Blue to give it some depth and definition. Now remember your values. You're going to have your light, your medium, and your darker tones. And notice that I'm not dragging the brush, I'm dabbing the color. I try to get all the little areas. It's a little more time consuming, but it's got to be done. Now, when you're painting, remember to start from the background towards the front. And your background is going to be out of focus because it's farthest away. But as you get closer to the forefront, you're going to make the area sharper. What you're painting, your subjects, they're going to become more focused and sharper. Now I have to put a lot of layers on this because the paint just kept going into the background and fading out. So I kept coming back. I would do one side, let it dry while I worked on the other side. Then I would come back, and while the other side is drying, I'm retouching the lighter areas and adding darker areas if it just disappears. That is just one of the characteristics of paints, acrylic paints. Now I have only a reference photo for the fish, but I'm going along as the painting develops without a reference picture for the background. So you're going to see me going back and forth trying to put in some more corals, more background, because this is just coming out of my head. I don't have a reference photo for the background, just for the fish. Now I started out with some white, titanium white, and red and yellow to come out with this little orangey color. I wanted to do the corals mainly in white, but it was not popping out the way I wanted it to. I wanted the white color to be more predominant. However, the color just kept being faded into the background. Here I'm using magenta, and it's called, let me see, Quinacridone Magenta, and I mixed it with some Titanian White, and I dabbed. I didn't drag the brush because this is supposed to be another coral. On this little coral here, I wanted to make a purple, so I mixed the magenta with some of the Phthalo Blue and white. I keep coming back and I add more definition to it in every area. While one side dries up, I'm working on the other one. I noticed that the color was just being sucked into the background, and I just kept going back and adding more of that orangey color. Here, the color that I'm using for this little leaves are Phthalo Blue, Phthalo Green, and some Titanian White. Retouch the white, and I add just pure magenta to this part here. I didn't mix some of it with water, with white. I only mixed some of it in white when I wanted lighter areas. Color to the leaves. I wanted a mossy green color in this area here, so I'm using Phthalo Green with some Titanian White. I went back and redefined some of the areas, add some of the shades and the bright colors to it. And I kept playing around with it until I got it to where I was satisfied with it. Now remember your lights. Your highlights are going to go where some of the rays are coming down from. Now this is Phthalo Blue. I figured I have a lot of green in this area, more than I wanted to. So I try to bring back some of the shadows. And I work work on the furthest part of the background. Don't forget those little nooks and crannies of every area exposed. And if you're not satisfied with the highlights, just go back and put some phthalo blue on it, or whatever dark color you're using. It's paint, you could fix it. Now, one of the things that I do need to mention, and I had forgotten that with the years that I stopped painting, is that with acrylics, you have to wait for it to dry. If you don't wait for the paint to dry and you go back into it, you'll lift the other layer up. So try to let it dry before you go back and retouch it. Otherwise, you'll be lifting up the old paint that you put down first. I decided to add some more coral to the background. I wanted to get a darker shade, but I wasn't sure what color I was going to use, so I tried to use some yellow ochre, and it was too light for my taste. Now, the ocean has some beautiful corals of different shades, different colors. Waiting for that yellow ochre to dry, so I start on another coral. Now, what I did here, I can't remember exactly what color I used, but I did use a mix of brown, titanium white, and a Naphthol Red Light paint. Where I got it to be more like a sienna color. Not burnt sienna, but more like a brownish, reddish color. You could play on your palette with the colors until you get the colors that you want. You can mix all sorts of colors, and if you don't like what you see, then repaint over it. Now, I noticed it was coming too dark, so I added more white into the mix that I had already in the palette. And I lightened it up more. It's good to get a reference photo on these things that you want to paint, so you have an idea what it looks like. And sometimes I forgot to look at the reference photos. And when you don't look at the reference photos, that's when you make mistakes, because you're not going to really know every detail of what you're painting. I have to apologize here because I had the camera set too high and I was not aware of it while I was painting. So these are other corals, like an orangey, a coral color mixed with the titanium white. Then I go back to the other coral and decided to add a darker brown. Now, you could make your color brown by mixing colors, but I used a brown this time. I didn't have to mix this. I did the same with this area because I was not happy with that little light yellow color. That was not the effect that I wanted to do. So I went back and I added some of the brown mixed with the white. I figured that the white that I wanted it to come out was going to be more predominant if I use a darker color in the background. I'm dabbing here my brush because I want a lighter shade outlining the coral. Then I made it lighter on the coral that is towards the front. Went back and worked on the back side. This is the darkest of the brown that I have. And I began to dab the white. I do the same thing with the other coral at the front. And now I can see the white a little better. And at the same time, it's giving its shadows and it's giving out a different dimension to the coral. You could say I have a little bit of OCD with me because I keep going back and try to get it the way I wanted to get it, and sometimes I couldn't get it to work and I went back and redid it again. It's okay, it's your painting, you do whatever you want. If you don't want to go into a lot of details, that's fine. You will find your own technique. You just need to practice at it. And if you put your painting down, don't wait years to pick it back up. You'll lose all the knowledge, all the skills that you acquired through your practice, and you lose your practice. So if for some reason you have to put down your paints, try not to make it into years before you come back to them. I've done that. Back to the magenta colored coral, and I want to add some highlights there too. So I got a stiff bristle brush and dabbed it on some titanium white and added the white to it. Now it didn't look right that it was just under the fish, so I went ahead and extended that coral further out. Now these corals are not smooth and straight, not all of them. They do have their little bumps and their little texture, so trying to get that into that area, excuse me. What I did was I dabbed some of the same color, but I added white to it. And try to redefine the lines where it starts and ends, and just dab, dab, dab. Trying to make the surface a little brighter, a little lighter, because that's where the sun rays come in through the water. Now remember, you're trying to make the front, the foreground, more defined, more focused. So there's more detail at the front. We're going to start with the larger orange coral, and again I mixed the Naphthol Red Light with some Hansa Yellow, and some white. Now this is where I had some problems, because when you put orange on top of a dark blue color, it tends to turn the paint that you're painting into a green color. So I had to go back a lot to it to keep it from turning green. And every area that I placed the color, it would turn green. I let it dry, and I came back and retouched it again, over and over again, until I could get that orange to pop out. I just continued going back and added some lighter and darker. Same shade, the only difference is that I added the titanium white for the bright areas. And when I wanted a little darker on the shadow area, I would use a little bit of brown. These are the highlights. Now the liner brushes that I had were a little too thick. I don't think these were liner brushes, but if you could get yourself a liner brush so you could make really thin lines, that would be a way to go. I don't use a whole lot of many different size brushes. I mainly stick to 2 or 3 different, and maybe hard bristle brushes to get some texture out of the painting. But I usually stick with my same brushes. I have a thin one, there could be a filbert brush in there, a flat brush, and if you're intending to make little paintings like these little fishes, you're going to need the tiniest little brush, the thinnest you could find. Now I mixed the Phthalo Blue with the Titanian White. I gave it a dark belly and a lighter top. Now I'm going back here and I'm adding some highlights and some shadows because this coral is not smooth. It's bumpy, it's got its own little ridges. So I used some of the brown with the orange that I mixed, and I did the shadows, and it gives the painting more dimension, more realistic. But I had to go back and continue doing it and repeating the process because the paint would keep fading into the background, and I really wanted it to pop. Now I left the fish for last because I wanted all my focus on that main subject. Here again I mixed the same white, Naphthol Red Light, and the Hansa Yellow to make an orange color. And it wants to turn the painting into a green color, and that's not what I want. So we're back to the process of adding more of the orange to get it to pop out. Now here I started out with some Phthalo Green and Titanian White. I wanted to get a metallic look, so I tried a metallic Phthalo Green that I had, and it was not coming out glittery and shiny like I wanted it to. So I went back to my regular Phthalo Green and Titanian White, and I mixed that and kept adding layers and layers of it until I got the color I wanted. When I want to make it brighter, I just add Titanium White to the color, and you could get your lighter colors that way. Now, I suggest that you look at your reference photo, and that's where I made some mistakes with this fish. I did not look at my reference photo too often. Now, this little fish has some really unique colors, and this does not make it, it does not make justice to the colors that this little fish has. Yeah, it's undescribable. It's hard to replicate the colors with a paintbrush. It's like an iridescent blue around the face and the body. And they're really fascinating. I was like, I can't believe there are so many colors in one little fish. And they're not all exactly alike. They have pretty similar colors, but they're not exactly alike. They're not twins. Not one is alike the other one. This area I'm using Phthalo Blue when it should be an iridescent blue, but since I could not replicate the effect, I just left it Phthalo Blue. Now they have kind of bulging eyes, and it's hard to get that in detail, so I'll try to do my best in this area here. If you see these little fishes in person, you'll know what I'm talking about. They have little iridescent blue colors coming out of the eye area, and it's just beautiful. I just could not get it to replicate. I guess I'll need more practice. I'm in the process of doing another one in oils that I had started years ago and abandoned it, but I'm going to go ahead and pick it up and finish it. And this one here in acrylics, it's going to give me the practice that I need to finish the one that I have already started in oils. Now their fins are not all alike. You'll have some variations on every fish. They're unique. I'm using a Phthalo Green mixed with Titanian White, and then I'll go back and add a darker color in the areas that I want darker, which is at the base of the fin. I believe this is called the dorsal fin. And while the fin dries, I go back to my orange and add another layer. Adding some brown here, believe I used a little bit of titanium white to bring it out more. I used some of the brown up here because I saw some of the brown on the fish, but for some reason it was not coming out the way I wanted it. I went back and added some more of the Phthalo Green and redo that whole area because I was just not happy with the color that was coming out. I could not replicate that metallic green. It was like an iridescent green, like an avocado iridescent green. I can't describe it. I looked at it and I was just not happy with the green. So I worked on other areas until I could decide what I was going to do. Sometimes you have to put your brush down and wait a day or two so you could see the areas that you want to fix. I cover those brown lines. I just did not like them. I did add some of the brown at the tip. Now I used, for the red, I used the Naphthol Red Light, and for the inside of those circles, I added the Phthalo Blue. Didn't mix it with white or anything. Still not happy with the green, so I started using a little more of the titanium white mixed with that green. Then I started adding a little bit of the Phthalo Blue, very light Phthalo Blue. So now I have a mix of Phthalo Blue, Phthalo Green, and titanium white, and you'll see me lightening up the fish as I go along. Here you can see that the Phthalo Blue is showing up a little better. And it's toning down that green. Remember your values. You're going to do the highlights. It's going to be lighter on the top of the fish because of the surface. The rays coming from the surface of the water. So now instead of the brown that I had originally placed there, I'm using the Phthalo Green and the Phthalo Blue mixed together with some Titanian White. Here again, I'm trying to get some brown in there, but it's still not coming out the color I wanted. Okay, enough with the brown. I just added Titanium White to the Phthalo Green and Blue. Now that orange was popping too much for me. And the orange in their heads is not that dark. So I found some metallic gold that I had laying around, and I used the metallic gold where the orange was to tone that orange down. But you don't have to use metallic if you don't have that. Just mix your orange with a little bit of titanium white to brighten it up. But if you have metallic paints and you're painting fishes, that would be a nicer choice. But not all metallic paints will come out metallic. Here, I put back a little bit of that gold. This is that Phthalo Blue, Phthalo Green, and Titanium White mixed. I blend it in with my fingers, or you could use a dry brush to blend in the colors. Now I have to go back and retouch what I did here because I changed the green so many times. I went back to Phthalo Blue, mixed it with a little bit of the titanium white, just a tiny bit, so I could get a darker shade at the bottom of the fin. I added the same color, Phthalo Blue, White, and Phthalo Green to that little bright line there. Same color on the top. Now this is where your reference photo comes in handy. And I got so caught up in painting that I forgot to look at my reference photo and I began to make mistakes. First of all, I started with the fin and it was not coming out the color I wanted. I had mixed the same color orange with the Naphthol Red Light, the Hansa Yellow, and Titanian White to make that orange. Now you can overdo a painting. You can overdo it. There's a time when you need to stop, stand back, reassess, come back to the picture, because I should have left it where it's at right now, and I didn't realize that until later. I wanted a see-through fin, you know, that you could see the green on the background. But for some reason I continued adding lighter colors of orange. So I stopped and I went back to other areas that I needed to do. And I started out with a lighter color orange, didn't like it, and then went back and redid it with the Phthalo Green, Blue, and White. Now here's number one mistake with the fish. I forgot to add the fin at the bottom. I don't know if this is called the pelvic fin or the anus fin. I can't remember, but I forgot to add it. And then I also looked at this fin and I'm like, oh no, the reference photo does not have the fin all the way around to the other side of the fish. So I try to fix it. If I would have looked at the photo that I had, I wouldn't have made this mistake. I would have left out the fin. So I try to add some green to make it look like the fins were shorter. I added white on the bottom so I could get the fin colored at the bottom. And try to redo this part of the fish again. And I was just really annoyed with myself for not noticing this earlier. And I can't stress enough, you can overdo a painting. You can really work it to the point where you should have just left it alone, you know. The fin, that orange fin, I should have just left it the way it was. So I kept working between the two fins, the green fin and the orange fin, waiting for one layer to dry, going back to the other layer on the other side. And the fin was not coming out transparent anymore because I overdid it. So that might be something you might want to avoid. It's overpainting it. This particular fin on the sides is supposed to be very thin, very see-through. And because I was adding so much paint to it, it lost that effect. But I'm relearning to paint because I dropped my paints many years ago and now I'm back to painting. So this is where you lose that practice. You know, you lose what you learned. You forget things. But that's okay because it soon starts to come back. If you're picking up your paintbrushes again, it'll start to come back. Once you start making those mistakes, then you'll see, holy cow, what did I do here? So, you know, it's paint. You could fix it, but sometimes you don't see those mistakes until after it, and you have to come back to the picture, to the painting, and try to fix it. And then when you fix it too much, you're not really fixing it anymore. So in all, I relearned a lot of the things that I already knew in the back years ago. I'm still using the Phthalo Green predominantly, with Titanian White and some Phthalo Blue. And then I add white to those colors to get a lighter shade at the edge, at the tips of the fin. And I imitate the same colors that I did on the dorsal fin. I go back and redefine some of the colors again so they pop out. Because remember, you want to focus painting. You want your subject to be focused and clear. Either way, I enjoyed my painting, and I'm glad I came back to painting. I really missed it, and it helps me to calm down. And here's the final painting.